Reconciling Oracle projects to the general ledger, an overview of the 3 steps. In my last video, an introduction to reconciling projects to GL, I discussed why reconciling projects to GL is so difficult. In this video, I'll give you an overview of my 3 steps to reconcile projects to GL.
Hi, my name is Steve Septon, and I've been using Oracle since 1993, and am helping companies implement Oracle projects since 1998.
The first step starts with getting an apples-to-apples comparison between your financial report and your project report. This step is important because you need to understand how GL data maps to project data in order to get a proper comparison. Once you've mapped the data elements of the 2 modules, you can move to step 2, comparing the journal entries in GL to the activity in projects. In step 2, you'll compare the journal entries in GL to the activity in projects. This step will give you insight on how the journal entry data flows to GL and the transactions flow to projects. After you know what to compare and how to compare it, you can proceed to the final step and find the variances. These variances come in 2 types, permanent and timing. Now let's take a closer look at these steps. In step 1, we'll add the correct GL information to our project report. In this step, we'll need to make sure we don't make the common mistake, like assuming that expenditure type will always go to the same GL account and the expenditure item date is always equal to GL date. So let's start with the data elements on a typical project report. As is, this report will be difficult to reconcile to the GL. But if we add the necessary data elements, then we can build our mapping to the GL by adding ledger, GL date, currency, transaction amount, functional amount, transaction source, expenditure class, and distribution status. We can find the corresponding GL journal for each expenditure item. Now that we know what to compare, let's go to step 2 and discuss how to compare the data from projects to the balances in GL. The first thing you need to understand is the way that project data flows to the GL is different than other subledgers. Projects actually has 3 different flows. The first way is like a typical subledger, where projects either creates or imports the transactions, then generates the accounting that is sent to the GL. The second way is like a shadow ledger, where project receives transactions that have already been accounted for in the GL. The third way is like a feeder system, where projects feeds transactions to another module. That other module then generates the accounting and interfaces it to GL. An example of the first flow would be if you entered a pre-approved expenditure batch in projects and ran all the processes to interface this expenditure to GL. In the GL, you will see a journal entry with a GL source of projects. An example of the second flow would be if you entered a vendor invoice into AP, and then ran the process to interface this invoice distribution to projects. Later, you ran the processes to interface the invoice to GL. In the GL, you will see a journal entry with a GL source of payables. An example of the last flow would be if you generated an invoice in projects and interfaced it to AR. Then you ran the processes in AR to interface the accounting of the invoice to the GL. In the GL, you'll see a journal entry with a GL source of receivables. Once you understand these flows and the GL sources and categories they use, you can build a mapping table from projects to GL. To compare project cost to GL, you will need to map the project cost transaction source, the cost distribution status flag, the distribution line type, and the expenditure type class to the GL source and category. Then you can compare the activity in projects for a given GL account, GL source, GL category, and GL period to the journal entries in GL for the same account, source, category, and period. If you find variances, then you'll need to determine if the variance is a timing variance or if the variance is a permanent variance. Timing variances could result from errored transactions that are stuck in the interface, or from processes that haven't been run yet. Permanent variances could result from posting a non-project transaction in the same account as a project transaction. I'll show you how to determine these variances in a later video. But first, make sure all accounting and project processes have been run successfully and all journal entries are posted. So if you want to provide accurate project data that supports your financial reports, you'll need to perform 3 steps. Step 1, add the GL data to your project report so you can do an apples-to-apples comparison. Step 2, understand the flow of data to the projects module and to the GL module. This will give you the information you will need to compare the project activity to the GL journals. And finally, step 3, find the timing and permanent variances between projects and GL. Please see my next set of videos for more details on how to map project data and on how to reconcile specific sources like AP, inventory, and purchasing.